Ladies and gentlemen, what you call reality, this concrete, solid, measurable thing, is not the cause of your life. It is the effect. Reality as you know it is not the truth. It is a mirror, a delayed reflection of something far more powerful, your inner state. You must ignore it. Yes, I said ignore it. Ignore the evidence of the senses. Ignore the facts that declare your dream is impossible. Ignore the voices that say, be realistic, because being realistic is the quickest way to stay exactly where you are. You are not here to serve what is. You are here to give birth to what can be. And how do you do that? You do it by entering the world of imagination, not as an escape, but as creation. Imagination is the workshop of God within you. Every image you hold with feeling, every scene you inhabit with conviction becomes a blueprint for what must manifest. You do not beg for change. You assume it. You do not wait for proof. You become the proof. You must live from the end, not toward it. Feel yourself to already be the person you desire to become. Speak from the result. Walk with the confidence of one who already has. And yes, your senses will protest. They will say, but look around you, nothing has changed. Ignore them. They are looking at yesterday's creation. They are late to the party. The inner shift has already occurred. And if you will persist quietly, faithfully, consistently, the world will conform. You see, what we call circumstances, people, and events, they are not independent of you. They are expressions of your dominant assumptions. There is no one to change but self. So revise what you think is fixed. Reimagine what you believe is broken. If something in the past haunts you, rewrite it in your mind's eye. Not to lie to yourself, but to free yourself. This is not delusion. It is divine rebellion. It is saying, I will no longer be a servant of facts. I will be the master of meaning. Do not wait for life to confirm your new story. Confirm it within. Feel it as real. Persist in that assumption until the outer world bends in recognition, because it will. And that's not hope. That's law. And above all, remember this. Faith is not passive. Faith is not hoping things might change. Faith is loyalty to the unseen that you have already claimed in consciousness. Ignore reality, and reality will eventually obey. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is the foundation upon which all experience rests. What you are conscious of being, thinking, feeling, and assuming writes itself into the world around you. Everything you encounter in your external life is a direct outpicturing of your internal state. You are not observing a world that exists independently of you. You are observing a world that echoes you. Most people believe they are reacting to life, when in truth they are reacting to the projections of their own beliefs. They think circumstances shape them, but they fail to see that they shape those very circumstances by the state of consciousness they have accepted as true. You do not get what you want, you get what you accept as true within. This is not about surface thoughts or fleeting desires. It is about the deep assumptions that dwell beneath your word, the quiet, consistent self-concepts you carry day after day. If you are inwardly identified with being unloved, unworthy, or overlooked, then the world has no choice but to mirror that state. But if you dare to assume a new identity, to dwell in the feeling of being loved, chosen, successful, and free, then reality will reassemble itself to make that assumption visible. This law is impartial. It does not reward the good or punish the bad. It simply reflects. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are creating. Whether you create consciously or by default, your world is always your mirror. The power lies not in effort, but in assumption. To shift your world, shift your state of consciousness. To see a different reflection, become a different cause. And how do you change your consciousness? Not by striving in the outer world, but by entering the inner one. Through imagination, the sacred act of feeling and seeing within, you claim new realities. Imagination is not wishful thinking. It is the act of creation itself. When you assume a state and persist in it, regardless of appearances, the world must conform. This is not philosophy, this is law. Reality follows consciousness like a shadow, always. Not a luxury, not fantasy, not escapism, but the creative force that shapes everything, seen and unseen. What you imagine with feeling and consistency becomes the mold into which life is poured. The world around you, the conditions you experience, the people you meet, all of it bends to the blueprint held within your imagination. Most have been taught to worship facts and to distrust dreams. They treat imagination as child's play, something to outgrow. But the truth is the opposite. The most powerful individuals throughout history have been those who knew how to use imagination consciously. They saw beyond appearances. They lived not in reaction to what is, but in devotion to what could be. They understood that the outer world is only a delayed reflection of an inner vision. Every breakthrough begins with imagination. Every transformation, every healing, every success, all of it starts in the unseen. You cannot experience what you have not first imagined, whether consciously or unconsciously. That is the real secret. You are imagining all the time. The question is not if you're using imagination, but how. When you rehearse failure, worry about tomorrow, or replay past pain, you are using imagination destructively. But when you use it deliberately, when you picture the best, feel it real, and dwell in its reality, you are aligning with the creative power that brings your vision to life. This power does not require effort in the conventional sense. It requires acceptance, clarity, and emotional involvement. You don't need to force or manipulate the outer world. You need only to enter the scene within, to hear the words, to see the faces, to feel the experience as though it were happening now. When the inner experience becomes vivid, the outer must conform. Imagination does not just respond to your desires. It gives birth to them. Every true desire is a divine seed planted in your consciousness, and imagination is the soil in which it grows. When you nurture it with belief and feeling, it takes root, and the invisible becomes visible. This is not superstition, it is the law of life. What you imagine, you become. What you persist in imagining, you will eventually live. To occupy the state of your fulfilled desire now, before any outer evidence appears. It is to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and dwell in it so naturally that it becomes your reality internally, even if the world still looks unchanged. You are not hoping or waiting. You are being. You are not trying to get to the end. You are living as if it has already arrived. This is not pretending or forcing. It is alignment. When you live from the end, you think, feel, act, and speak from the standpoint of your desire already being true. You are not reaching for the thing, you are reaching from it. Your conversations change, your emotions shift, your self-concept elevates. You no longer ask, when will it happen? Because you know it has already happened in the unseen. Living from the in means trusting that imagination is the only reality. It means choosing to identify with the version of you who already has what you once longed for. When you embody that identity internally, the world reshapes itself in response. It has no choice. Consciousness is always the cause. The outer world is always the effect. Most people live from the middle, reacting to facts, adjusting their mood based on appearances, waiting for permission to believe. But the one who understands this principle reverses the process. You decide the outcome, then you inhabit it emotionally. You don't negotiate with doubt, you override it with faith. Not blind faith, but faith rooted in inner knowing. The outer world is slow, it follows the inner command. When you live from the end, you bypass the need to control steps or predict how things will unfold. You don't chase, you attract. You don't hustle, you allow. Because once you dwell in the end, the means to fulfill it arrange themselves in ways you could never have planned. Living from the end is not about daydreaming without substance. It is about moving in the world with a calm assurance that your inner reality is more real than anything the senses report. It is about holding the unseen with such conviction that it must harden into fact. When you live from the end, you are no longer becoming, you are being. And from that being, everything flows. Refusing to let your current circumstances dictate what you believe to be true. It is the disciplined act of looking beyond what is visible and choosing instead to focus on what is unseen, yet felt and known within. The senses report only what has already been created. They are the messengers of the past. But your imagination speaks of what is becoming. If you accept only what your senses tell you, you will remain a servant to the world as it is, rather than a creator of what could be. To deny the evidence of the senses is not to ignore reality out of delusion, but to understand that reality is not fixed, it is fluid, responsive, and always trailing behind consciousness. When you look at a situation that contradicts your desire, whether it's lack, illness, conflict, or delay, and still hold firm to your assumption of fulfillment, you are saying, this may be what appears now, but it is not what is. I know a deeper truth. This kind of denial is not passive, it is an active rejection of limitation. It is choosing to trust the unseen reality you've imagined more than the outer facts that seem to contradict it. When you persist in this inner knowing, when you continue to feel the reality of your desire as though it were already so, you override the temporary conditions with the power of assumption. And slowly the outer must shift. It must reflect the inner change, because that is law. The world will test your commitment. It will offer appearances that tempt you to doubt, to give up, to settle. But those moments are the proving ground of your faith. If you can see abundance while surrounded by lack, if you can feel loved when all seems cold, if you can celebrate success while the world says you failed, then you are mastering the art of creation. You are no longer reacting to life, you are commanding it. Denying the senses does not mean ignoring life, but seeing beyond it. It is the refusal to let facts dictate your future. It is choosing to live according to your inner vision, not the outer noise. The world catches up always, but only after you have stood firm in what you know to be true, even when nothing yet shows it, holding unwaveringly to your assumption, no matter how loudly the outer world insists otherwise. It is the quiet, steady refusal to be moved by what appears, and instead of remaining loyal to the unseen reality you have claimed within. Circumstances are never permanent. They are temporary arrangements of past assumptions. They are not cause, only effect. And effects have no power unless you grant them your attention and belief. To persist is not to strain or struggle. It is to return again and again to the inner feeling of the wish fulfilled. It is to rehearse in imagination the result you desire, regardless of the time it seems to take. It is to act, think, and feel as the version of yourself who already possesses what you've asked for, and to continue in that role even when everything outside contradicts it. The world may resist at first. It may present delay, opposition, or silence, not because your assumption is wrong, but because your old creations are still echoing. Persistence means you do not take those echoes as truths. Those who understand this principle know that outer change is inevitable when inner conviction is sustained. But the moment you look at the evidence and doubt, the moment you let circumstance speak louder than your inner vision, you return to the very state that created what you now wish to change. So you must persist, not out of force, but out of knowing. Knowing that the law is unfailing. Knowing that what you feel consistently must externalize. Knowing that the longer you dwell in a new state of being, the more real it becomes, until the world reflects it with certainty. Remember, in a certain persistence is what separates desire from manifestation. Many imagine once or after per day, then abandon the vision when the world doesn't move quickly enough. But true creation belongs to the one who keeps showing up in the inner world, regardless of the outer noise. It is not dramatic or loud. Often it is quiet and invisible. But it is powerful beyond measure, because what you persist in being, the world is compelled to acknowledge. Your inner state, when maintained, must break through the surface and reassemble what surrounds you. That is the power of persistence, not just in thought, but in identity. When you refuse to move from your assumed state, reality has no choice but to move instead. It is the bridge between imagination and manifestation. It is not enough to think of your desire. You must feel it as real, as though it already exists. Feeling gives life to thought. It charges the invisible with the power to become visible. When you feel something deeply, you impress it upon your subconscious. And the subconscious does not argue. It accepts and expresses whatever it is given, with feeling. Words alone do little if they are not infused with emotion. You can affirm wealth, love, or success all day long. But if underneath your words you feel lack, rejection, or failure, it is the feeling that will shape your world. The subconscious responds not to empty phrases, but to the emotional reality behind them. Feeling is the language of creation, the signal that communicates your inner state to the fabric of reality. This is why assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the core of creation. You must move beyond merely imagining the scene of your desire. You must enter it emotionally and psychologically. You must feel the joy of the outcome, the relief, the peace, the certainty. You must dwell in it long enough for it to feel natural, normal, familiar. Once it feels like home within, it begins to materialize without. Feeling does not mean forcing emotion or faking enthusiasm. It means genuinely allowing yourself to experience the internal reality of your assumption. Even a quiet sense of this is done is enough. It is not the intensity but the authenticity of the feeling that matters. When the inner state becomes more real to you than the outer facts, you are in the creative zone, and what you feel within must echo in the world around you. Every change you seek begins with a shift in feeling. Change the emotion, and the circumstance follows. Remain loyal to a new emotional state, and you set in motion events, encounters, and conditions aligned with it. Your world is always responding to what you feel to be true. That is the secret, the silent, invisible force behind every outward effect. What you feel, you become. What you become, you live. It is the only point of true creative power. It is not the past that binds you, nor the future that frees you. It is what you are assuming, believing, and feeling now that determines what unfolds. Every state you occupy, every identity you claim, every scene you accept as real in this instant plants the seed of future experience. The world you will walk into tomorrow is being written by your consciousness today. There is no power in waiting, hoping, or delaying your assumption. When you postpone the feeling of fulfillment until something happens, you suspend your creative power and remain a servant to conditions. But the moment you choose to feel it now, to embody the desired reality within this very breath, you initiate a chain of events that must bring your assumption into form. The present is always the entry point. It is where you begin, where you shift, where you create. Many people live in the memory of what was, or the anticipation of what might be, never realizing that both are projections from the present state they are carrying. If you continue to feel now as you did yesterday, tomorrow cannot be different. But if you dare to occupy a new state now, even in the face of contrary evidence, you shift the entire direction of your life. The future bends to the quality of your present assumption. This moment does not need proof. It needs commitment. When you claim a new state now, not because you've earned it or proven it, but because you choose it, you are sowing the seed of your next reality. Nothing is waiting for you but your own alignment. There are no conditions to meet, no tests to pass, only a willingness to assume the feeling of the fulfilled desire here and now. Creation does not happen in time, it happens in consciousness. And consciousness only exists in this moment. Whatever you give life to now will echo forward. Whether you feed fear, doubt, and delay, or whether you nurture confidence, gratitude, and fulfillment, the choice is yours. And it is always made now. Everything you encounter in the outer world is a reflection of your inner state. People, situations, opportunities, and even obstacles are shaped and colored by the assumptions you hold about yourself and life. You are not dealing with others as they are, but as you perceive them to be, and that perception arises from within. If someone treats you with indifference or hostility, it is not about changing their behavior through force or persuasion. It is about recognizing what in you has accepted that treatment as normal or expected, and then changing that self-perception. In his case, or in his companion, the same. When you shift within, when you assume a new role, embrace a new identity, or revise your concept of who you are, the outer world must shift in response. This is not metaphorical, it is law. You cannot remain the same inside and expect the outside to change. But the moment you embody a new state of being, the mirror of life begins to reflect it back in surprising, sometimes immediate ways. This truth is freeing. You no longer need to wait for others to understand you, approve of you, or behave differently. You no longer need to manipulate circumstances or explain yourself to the world. Instead, you turn inward and do the only real work there is, the work of self-revelation. When you change your concept of self, when you see yourself as loved, worthy, successful, powerful, the world echoes back people and events that confirm it. Every conflict, every lack, every disappointment in the outer world is pointing you inward, asking you to examine the self you are currently expressing, not to judge it, but to recognize your power to choose again. You are never stuck because your self is never fixed. You can revise it at any moment by imagining and feeling yourself to be someone new. This is not about blaming yourself for outer conditions. It is about taking responsibility for the creative process. You are the operant power. You are the one setting the tone. When you assume the change within, the people around you often shift without knowing why. Situations resolve. Resistance disappears. But it all begins when you stop trying to change the world and instead change the lens through which you view it yourself. Because What you are conscious of being is always what you experience. The past is not fixed in stone. It lives only in your memory and imagination, and these are completely malleable. What you once experienced or believed happened, no matter how painful or limiting, can be reshaped by your conscious will. By revisiting and revising your memories, not to deny or distort truth, but to free yourself from the emotional charge they hold, you unlock the power to transform your present and future. Every negative memory carries with it a residue of feeling that lingers and influences your current state. When you replay past failures, hurts, or mistakes, you are repeatedly planting those same seeds in your consciousness, causing the same reality to reproduce itself again and again. But when you take hold of the past and rewrite the scene in your imagination, changing the outcome or the meaning you give it, you break that cycle. You replace the old emotional imprint with a new one that supports your desired state rather than undermines it. This act of revision is a form of redemption because it liberates you from being a victim to history. You're no longer bound by what really happened, but are empowered to create a new inner narrative that aligns with who you want to be. By imagining yourself responding differently, forgiving, succeeding, or finding peace in a past event, you dissolve the chains that once held you captive. This healing reverberates into your present experience, altering your feelings, attitudes, and even the people and circumstances you attract. Revision is not about escaping reality or lying to yourself. It is about reclaiming your creative authority over your own story. The moment you accept that your past can be changed in your mind, you realize you are free at last. Free to choose your state, free to live from a place of empowerment, free to manifest a future unshackled by yesterday's limitations. In essence, every revision plants a new seed that blossoms into a transformed reality. Redemption comes not from changing the outer facts, but from changing how you remember and feel them within. When you redeem your past through revision, you redeem your present and your future for all time. Your power is not in what you see, but in what you choose to see and feel within. Reality is pliable, waiting patiently for the command of your consciousness. When you ignore the false limitations of the senses, persist unwaveringly in your chosen state, and rewrite the story you tell yourself, you become the master of your destiny. The outer world cannot help but conform to the reality you create inside. So stand firm, live boldly from the end, and claim your life. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Because in the kingdom of creation, the greatest truth is this: what you imagine and feel to be true, you live, and nothing else holds greater power.